Hi, my name is Jessica Saunders, and I'm a tutor here in the Academic Success Center. And the purpose of this video is just to give you some tips and walk you through how to analyze a primary source document. And basically, a primary source document is just any manuscript, letter, artifact, anything like that that was created in the time of history that you're studying. So it's just any kind of original document to that time period. So you'll get these throughout the semester, and then Dr. Hicks will ask you a few questions about it. And so I have an example pulled up here, and we'll just kind of walk through it real quick. And just talk about some tips on how to go about doing this effectively. So the first question that she asks you basically just involves contextualizing the document. So she's going to ask you the basic questions like who wrote the document, when was it written, where was it written, that kind of thing. So typically you can find the answers to all of those questions in this first paragraph in the italics. And in this document, that is the case. So right here you see that it's an Egyptian document. It was written around 2000 BC. Here it talks about the method by which it was distributed, and the intended audience would have been Egyptians that had passed away because these documents were placed in the coffins. So all in this little first paragraph, you get the answers that you need. However, there will be some documents that won't be as straightforward. You'll be missing, maybe the date that it was published or the author or something like that. And so that's always whenever you use either the internet or your textbook. So usually the chapter that corresponds with the document will have the missing information that you need. Or like I said, you can always go to the internet and find the information there. So scrolling up to this first question here, like I said, it's pretty straightforward. All the information was in that paragraph. But say it wasn't and you had to cite the book, you just have to make sure that you cite the source that you got it from. So say this was something that you found in the book, basically you would just put parentheses, then the author of your textbook, and then the page number was found, close parentheses. And so that's how you would cite the textbook if that's where you got information. So the next question involves a little bit more analysis on your part. The questions are, what are the main purposes of the document? What's the argument? Is the argument well supported? And who is the intended audience? So read those questions first, and then go into reading your document with that in mind, basically. So go down here, look at this book or this document that's in the Egyptian Book of the Dead. So you're reading through here, kind of notice that this whole section, the speaker seems to just be praising Osiris, who was the Egyptian god of the underworld. So that's what he's doing here. And then the rest of the document, if you keep reading it, looks like it's just a lot of statements on things that the speaker has not done, laws that he hasn't broken, moral codes that he hasn't broken. So he's basically, it looks like he's just kind of pleading his case to Osiris, trying to prove that he was a just person and that he deserves to have a good life after death, basically. So you kind of look at that, take all those things into account, scroll back up to your question. So here I just stated who the intended audience was, gave a little bit more background on what specifically the Book of the Dead, what the purpose of it was, and then just walked through kind of what I said about the document, that it looks like just the speaker, he praises Osiris for who he is, and then he explains like why he deserves to have a good afterlife because of the moral codes that he had followed while he was still alive. So I said that his argument was well supported, And yeah, basically that does take a little bit more analysis on your part, but just read the document with these questions in mind, and then just analyze accordingly. Also, my other piece of advice for this section would just be to write more than less. It's always better to elaborate more on what you're thinking or why you are answering in this way than to write less. So that's always just what I would recommend whenever you're answering any of these questions. Now on question 3, as well as question 4, you literally cannot write a wrong answer. However, you can not write enough, I guess. So you can't, anything in the document can be interesting to you. You just have to make sure that you elaborate further and explain why it's interesting. Like, don't just put, excuse me, don't just put like a statement saying, just like quoting the document and leave it there. Go on to further explain why you think it's important or interesting. So scrolling back down to our document, as I was reading through, I noticed that there were several sentences that had to do with like farming and agriculture, and so those I highlighted here. So like right here, not cheated in the fields, not deprive cattle of their pleasure. And then I found kind of some other similar ones having to do with religion. So I highlighted these, talking about the temples, gods, offerings, things like that. And so up here on question 3, I just said that some of these statements throughout the document show aspects of Egyptian culture, like the agricultural references with cattle and cheating on the fields. There are also references to temples, food offerings, and gods, emphasizing the importance that Egyptians placed on religion and rituals and things like that. So I stated the fact, what I thought was interesting, but I also explained why I thought it was interesting. And then that's also what you're going to need to do on question 4. When she asks you about what is unclear or what you'd like to know more about. Literally can be anything you want it to be. You just have to make sure you explain why it's unclear to you. And so down here, that's just with the same document, I noticed that all these things were pretty straightforward. I understood what he was talking about. I was tracking with him. But then he gets to this stanza right here, talking about I've not held back water in its season. I've not dammed a flowing stream. I've not quenched a needed fire. To me, it just seems a lot less straightforward. I don't really get what he's talking about. And so I scroll back up here and I say, I understand the other wrongdoings that he mentions, but these seem odd and out of place. How does a mortal human even have power to do these things, and are they even wrong? So again, just explaining, I don't understand what he's talking about, but kind of maybe asking a question about, from my uncertainty, explaining kind of why I am confused about that. And yeah. So I hope those tips were somewhat helpful, and I wish you all the best in your semester of Western Civ, and have a good night.